It happened a while ago now, but there was so much news I wanted to cover earlier, so this video got delayed several times. But yeah, Tesla officially discontinued the right-hand drive versions of the Model S and Model X, which absolutely upset a ton of markets around the world because previously they were promised they would get these vehicles. They took deposits for them. So I believe at one time, at least, Tesla was planning on delivering these refreshed Model S's and X's, you know, the ones with the landscape center display, the yoke at first, but now the steering wheel, but still no gear stocks, the ventilated seats, the Falcon Wing doors, the insane performance. Yeah, these vehicles are a huge part of Tesla's history. They were kind of the first vehicles from the ground up that Tesla designed themselves, rather than trying to base it off of another existing vehicle design like the original Roadster, which didn't even have NACS on it, never was compatible with supercharging. So the Model S and X holds a very special place in a lot of Tesla fans' hearts across the world. Yes, including those nations that have right-hand drive vehicles. So rightfully, many people were upset, and it led to a lot of speculation on what this could mean. Why then, if this upset so many customers and Tesla was having demand issues, it seems, with the Model S and X, they weren't selling as much as they would like. That's why they cut the price by nearly $40,000, and now they're offering free supercharging until the end of June for 3 years. Honestly, with how reputable and awesome the supercharging network is, that is an incredible value, and that, at least in the short term, has appeared to alleviate some of the demand concerns because inventory is finally declining for the Model S and X, and they actually started increasing the price on the S and X more recently by just a couple grand. So it's interesting to see how quickly Tesla can go from, okay, massive price drop, to, okay, a lot of people are buying them now, let's up the price again to compensate for it. They're just all over the place, but still, if you have inventory this high for these vehicles, why not start manufacturing right-hand drive versions? Well, I asked you guys on your theories because I wanted to see if anybody out there had some reasonable speculation on the actual engineering levels of not just having to update the software in the interior design for having the yoke or steering wheel on the right-hand drive, but also does it come down to the internal mechanisms inside the vehicle, like where the HVAC is versus where the steering wheel column, you know, connects to the front wheels and everything. But no one was really complaining that it was an engineering or technical problem that was preventing right-hand drive from existing. Everyone brought it back to demand. It was just that, yeah, there may be some countries where you have some really passionate people there that want it, but already a lot of people were saying Model S and X is very complicated and resulted in a huge portion of the Fremont factory being down and requiring upgrades and retrofits to accommodate for the changes they made back in 2021. So to complicate it even further with a right-hand drive option in 2023, Tesla's just not the kind of company that wants to deal with this much complexity anymore. So yeah, pre-refresh, I guess they could get behind it, which honestly I thought pre-refresh would have been debatably harder, considering in the portrait mode Model S and X displays, the screen was actually pivoted towards the driver a little bit. Now the center display can actually pivot side to side. I would have thought this refresh would have been easier to retrofit to right-hand drive, but maybe I'm wrong, or perhaps I'm not, and Tesla's just in a different circumstance now where, okay, they finally ramped up production of the S and X, and the overhead for it is quite high, and they're trying to ramp up production of Model Y. They're trying to refresh the Model 3 simultaneously, and they just decided, you know what, okay, we just can't give everybody exactly the trim they wanted. The Model X already has all these color options, these complicated Falcon Wing doors, and we've got a 5-seater, a 6-seater, and a 7-seater. Elon in the past has even mentioned the idea of dropping the 5 and 7-seaters, just going all in on the 6-seater because he deems that the most luxurious one. In my opinion, it's the worst. You can't fold that second row flat, which is really cool for us car campers, and it doesn't sit as many people as the 7-seater does. So I would actually drop the 6-seater before dropping anything else. But I guess what worries me about this is I do think these are amazing vehicles. If I haven't mentioned it before, Model X is my dream car. Like, if I had all the money in the world, I'd be buying a long-range Model X. I don't care about the performance, but I like the idea of sitting that many people with efficiency that good and then partnering that with the beautiful panoramic windshield. I like the auto-presenting doors and the cooled seats and everything, but as Tesla's heading into more difficult times, you know, where margins are decreasing and arguably the demand is maybe not as good as they were hoping for, or perhaps maybe Tesla is looking at the factory floor space that is designated to the Model S and X and thinking, you know, we could expand our existing assembly lines and update our factory to output more cars total, and arguably cars with better margins than what the Model S and X could potentially offer, assuming that less and less people end up buying the Model S and X, especially when we saw those inventory climbs really fast, and that was even after Tesla applied massive, $5,000, $10,000 price cuts on the Model S and X. I bet there's an internal debate at the company right now on whether or not it's worth continuing production of these vehicles, right? Tesla has that mindset of like the best process is no process, and these are very intricate, complicated cars, and the Fremont factory is very much kind of tapped out with floor space and everything. So as much as I love those cars, mostly the Model X, I do have to admit that there's an increasing argument growing now for should they continue making these things. And I bet a lot of you are already thinking, well, even if we cut the price of the Model S and X down lower to where it's breaking even and the gross margin on the S and X are zero, well, that doesn't hurt anything, right? Tesla's still putting more electric vehicles on the road, which benefits everybody. And the Model 3 and Y, they can be the profitable vehicles. And the Model S and X, they can just be kind of the cool, flashy vehicles that are good for branding and good for marketing because they're fast and they're flashy and they're cool. And kind of like what I said, they're the perfect dream car material. They're just something to aspire to. They're not something that needs to keep the company afloat by any means. And while I can understand that argument, in fact, I've used that argument in the past, like they don't hurt anything, I do think now the argument needs to be made of, well, they are occupying resources in engineering and factory workers that are having to build them on the assembly line that could be resources and square footage designated to a more optimized Model 3 assembly line, or just expanded Model Y assembly lines, which ultimately Tesla's goal, accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. So if you can optimize the Model 3 and Y assembly lines more and more, then you can lower the price on them, improve the margins, or improve the addressable market by decreasing the price and still being able to sell it at a profit. That's where I think the argument is coming in of like, could the resources being spent on maintaining, especially with all those service visits, those Falcon Wing doors, or the Plaid powertrains, or all the complexity involved with the Model X, could those resources go towards other things? But to play on the opposite hand of that argument, there are a lot of parts and components in the Model S and X that wouldn't really go towards anything else. And you probably could argue that shutting down the Model S and X assembly line would be very wasteful because they're the only Tesla vehicles using the 1865 cells, which no other Tesla I don't think is really that compatible with, or even if they were expanding Model 3 or Model Y assembly lines, I don't think they would bother retrofitting those cells or those components into the Model 3 and Y anyway. So I guess you could argue maybe there'd be a ton of 1865 cells to designate towards, Tesla Powerwalls, I suppose, but LFP long-term will probably make more sense for energy storage. So yeah, it's not a super clear path that I think makes a lot of sense for Tesla. But one thing that I've been speculating on for a while now that I wanted to pitch to you guys is maybe there's a happy middle ground we could find here. Like I mentioned in previous videos that maybe if they refresh the Model 3, they could turn it into a bit more of a hatchback and maybe make it a little bit longer, and perhaps with more structural battery pack or single piece castings, they could increase or improve the performance of the Model 3 or Y in time. And maybe the healthy compromise would just be to, instead of building Model 3s and Model Ys and then also building high-end Model S's and X's, I don't know if this would necessarily be more manufacturing friendly, but what if the Model 3 and Y just get a bit more diverse in their lineup offerings? So we continue making and selling the cheap Model 3s and Ys, but we also start to just increase the quality of the performance variants. Maybe make them a bit more luxurious. You start putting some fancier interior options, whether that be the cream interior or the cooled seats, but they're just built on the same Model 3 chassis, and you diversify the Model 3 product offering a little bit to offer some more luxurious, more higher end Model 3s that are faster. And same thing with the Model Y. You can offer one with a bit more luxurious seat options, and maybe if you tweak the interior a little bit, you can have better display or a driver display on the Model Y Performance, but you don't bring that to the long range or the standard range Model Y because those prioritize affordability. Maybe by sharing more components that way and just diversifying the interior, you could just manufacture the Model 3 and Y, but the performance Model 3 and Ys could basically occupy or kind of cater to the market that the Model S and X are currently serving. You definitely not get everything back, like I don't think they would bring the Falcon Wing doors. At least you would have roof rack functionality, which the Model X currently doesn't, so that might make it easier on the factory line. And I also feel like at this point, a lot of people are opting for the performance because it's really not that much more than the long range. They're so close in price, both for the Model 3 and Model Y. People are like, yeah, I want those better tires or bigger tires at least anyway. So maybe by increasing the luxuriousness of the performance Model 3 and Y, increasing the price by a bit, but it would still be way cheaper than a Model S or X, then you could have a bit more of a diverse diverse product lineup without the complexities of having an entire separate Model S and X assembly lines. But what do you guys think of these ideas? Maybe bringing self-presenting doors to the 3 and Y just on the higher end vehicles. Do you think that would complicate it further, or do you think it makes sense to continue manufacturing the Model S and X and just continuing to lower the price if the demand isn't quite there for it? Feel free to drop your ideas down in the comments below, and thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.